And this all dates back to 2011, doesn't it? And emails that have now come to light.
It does, and what we're really seeing in the space of just a few weeks is a real transformation in some ways with what the Duchess was saying, certainly publicly versus privately, in this email that was sent allegedly to Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced paedophile financier, who of course was a long-time associate of her ex-husband, Prince Andrew. Her spokesman responding to these reports, which have appeared in the papers this morning, saying that the only reason she sent him this email in the first place, apologising for what she'd said publicly in an interview to the Evening Standard, was because he'd threatened to sue her. But as you mentioned, of course, this was all back in 2011, so this was long before the worst of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes were understood publicly. But he had pleaded guilty to things like soliciting prostitution of somebody under the age of 18. And it was in that context, I think, that a few years later, in 2011, she'd given this interview to the Evening Standard, speaking really of her regrets of her associations with him. She apologised for accepting £15,000 from Epstein, telling reporters that she would never have anything to do with the sex offender again. A few more quotes from what Sarah Ferguson had to say. She said, I abhor paedophilia and any sexual abuse of children. I know this was a gigantic error of judgment on my behalf. I am just so contrite. So that's what she'd said publicly, but we now understand that privately, a few weeks, just over a month or so later, she emailed Jeffrey Epstein, sending the sex offender this email from her private account, apologising. She said she was bedridden with fear. She said, I know you feel let down by me, hellaciously let down by me. She said she humbly apologised to him. And she also said that he had always been a steadfast, generous and supreme friend to both her and her family. Now, in response to these allegations, the claims of this email, as I said in the papers over the weekend, the Duchess's spokesman has spoken out, saying that Epstein had threatened to sue her for defamation in that gap between the interview and the email after she'd associated him with paedophilia. And this is the full statement. It says the Duchess spoke of her regret about her association with Epstein many years ago, and as they have always been, her first thoughts are with his victims. Like many people, it says she was taken in by his lies. As soon as she was aware of the extent of the allegations against him, she not only cut off contact, but condemned him publicly to the extent that he then threatened to sue her for defamation for associating him with paedophilia. She doesn't resile from anything she said then. And it adds, this email was sent in the context of advice the Duchess was given to try to assuage Epstein and his threats. Of course, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his cell in Manhattan while awaiting trial back in 2019. His death ruled as a suicide, but of course we're seeing his name so often in the news, in the papers at the minute, because in America it's become such a political issue, with those on the right and left demanding that more information about Epstein, about what the government knew about his associates, be released into the public domain. And of course, it was only a few weeks ago that Peter Mandelson, the British ambassador to the US, was removed from his post after it emerged that he too had sent messages to Epstein. In his case, he called him my best pal.